Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started with our September monthly webinar for the LEA SE POCs. Before we get started, we wanted to let you know that a copy of today's webinar slides are currently available for download on the SEDS resource site, and the link is available as you see in front of you. We will give an opportunity for participants to ask questions during the webinar, and we encourage you to ask questions. So we will pause after each relevant section so you have an opportunity to ask questions. And we also want to let you know that a follow-up email will be sent to all LEA SE POCs, and we'll include the link to this recording that we're doing right now. So let's get started. The agenda for today's webinar is we have a lot to talk about, so we're going to try to get through it in this hour that we have, 50 minutes. We're going to talk about some SEDS updates and improvements. For those of you who have attended the SEDS 7.0 training, you've already received some of these updates, but we will highlight some of the new features as well. We will then go into the OSSE support tool and talk about some of the changes and some of the requirements for those users who do use the OSSE support tool on a daily basis. We'll go into resources for improvement and data quality. Then we'll move to training tips and close out with reminders and announcements. We'll start with SEDS updates and improvements. So we are excited to finally be able to announce and let you know that the SEDS 2014 fall release will be on October 20th, 2014. So we are very excited about that date, and we are excited to provide you and offer you the really new and exciting features for SEDS, the new version of SEDS. We also want to let you know that as some training resources, you as the LEA SE POC can prepare for and train your relevant staff by using one or more of the following. Again, as I mentioned before, we had a webinar on August the 13th, which is recorded and already posted on the SEDS resource site, so you can use that as a form of training for your users. Additionally, we will offer a secondary training on October the 1st for SEDS fall release. And this is a two-part training. The first part is a webinar such as this format, which you do not need to be in person for. So if you can't actually come in person, you can listen in on the webinar. And that will take place from 9 to 10 a.m. And the second part of this training will be a hands-on practice using demonstration, the demonstration site, which is held at the OSSE Computer Lab. And you can register at the link that's provided for this respective training. So again, you do not need to come in person if you want to attend this training. You have the option to either just listen in on the webinar or also listen in on the webinar and come in for a hands-on demonstration. Additionally, you can train your users with a summary of changes document, which will be coming soon to the SEDS resource site. We wanted to highlight, so we have been working on the SEDS resource site, and we wanted to highlight some of these really fantastic updates for the SEDS resource site. So what I'll do first is I will just quickly talk about what these changes are, and then I'm actually going to walk you through the SEDS resource site to let you know what these changes look like. So some of the new features that you'll see on the SEDS resource site include a movement from a double toolbar. We had a toolbar on the left-hand side and one on the top previously. So now we are moving to a single toolbar that will house all SEDS-related items. And as I mentioned before, we had a left-hand toolbar before. Now we will have on the left-hand side a countdown to upcoming trainings, which I'll show you in just a moment. You will also see relevant SEDS updates on the main home page. If there is a feed failure or an outage of SEDS, you'll see on the main home page an announcement detailing that failure. And finally, you'll also see a calendar with all upcoming SEDS and OSSE trainings that will be posted on the SEDS resource site. So let's quickly just take a look at the new SEDS resource site, and I can show you what the new layout is. Okay. So we just wanted to, again, detail, so the 4 new features that I mentioned, the first and I believe most relevant change is that you'll see all of the tabs on the left-hand side have now disappeared, and they are all housed on the top tab up here. So you'll notice that there are SEDS roles, specifically the LEA SE POC and the non-public point of contact, all relevant trainings. Any system issues will be included in this respective tab. All respective help resources, including links to the OSSE support tool, facts, FAQs, and all archived materials. So that's one of the most significant changes. Additionally, on the left-hand side, this former toolbar right here has now turned into a countdown to upcoming training. So you'll notice that today is the LEA SE POC webinar, and a week from today we'll have our NP POC quarterly webinar. Additionally, in this page as well, we have an enrollment feed update. So again, as I mentioned, if there are any outages or feed failures, you will find the announcement detailing when this failure will be rectified in this respective section. And then I'm going to scroll down to show you. We also have an OSSE training calendar posted, in which you'll be able to click on the respective training and register for that training. So that's a really great feature that we wanted to show you, and we wanted to be able to share this with you. So we'll return to the Okay, fantastic. So let's move on to the OSSE support tool and some of the new features, as well as some of the reminders we wanted to discuss regarding the OSSE support tool. The first area we wanted to discuss is how to categorize OST tickets. We wanted to remind those users that submit OSSE support tool tickets that when you do submit a ticket, please be aware of all the categories that are available to you. There are many categories, and each of these categories help us to route these respective tickets. And so we do ask that you select categories carefully and appropriately so that we can route your ticket and rectify it as quickly as possible. Each of the issue types also have some subcategories, so once you've selected one of these categories, you can then select a subcategory if appropriate. We also wanted to detail that there are new enrollment categories that have been added. So specifically for your data POCs or anyone who is responsible for the enrollment issues, these categories are relevant. So in alignment with the enrollment season, and we're in the midst of it right now, and with the upcoming audit, we've created new enrollment subcategories that will help clarify to you what types of issues these relate to. So you'll notice on the left-hand side that we have categories that are related to ADT, for example. If there are specific enrollment audit issues that are SLED related, we want you to ensure that you select the correct subcategory when submitting an enrollment ticket. We also wanted to point out that we are offering a new feature for, again, your data POCs and for anyone who is responsible for submitting OSSE support tool tickets with regards to enrollment. For those LEAs that may be submitting multiple tickets from your same LEA that are enrollment related, we are giving you an opportunity to use the enrollment audit global issue template, and I just wanted to walk you through where you could locate this. This respective template will allow you to include multiple enrollment issues and consolidate them into one OSSE support tool ticket. And this is useful for you because you don't have to submit more than one ticket. You can submit one ticket that includes multiple entries. And it's also useful because you will not be having to check multiple responses as well. You can locate this template on the Quick Reference Guide tab, which is located on the top of the OSSE support tool. And this is what the template looks like. Again, you'll be able to use this for the 2014-15 enrollment season. And again, you'll simply just enter in your LEA name, the name of the students, the USI, and the issue description. Again, if it's coming all from the same LEA. So we wanted to offer that as an opportunity for you to save some time with regards to enrollment issues. We also wanted to remind you, this is a pre-existing feature, but we wanted to remind you about the process for requesting transfer of student records. So in the OSSE support tool, you have an opportunity to request the transfer of student records, and there is a specific button that, again, highlights request transfer of student records. And this will then print out a report of the students that are enrolled at your LEA for whom you can request records for. And again, this is all pre-existing. We just wanted to give you a reminder of how to go about the process of requesting student records. So I will not talk through all of these steps, but if you have any questions regarding these steps, we ask that you ask them in the pause and reflect section. That will give you an opportunity to ask questions. And again, this is simply a repeat of how to request records. So what I did want to point out, and we again have been receiving tickets regarding this process, we wanted to remind you that the transfer process ordinarily takes between 2 and 3 business days. So if you don't see those records immediately, we want you to sit tight because they will be coming. It does take between 2 and 3 business days. We also ask that when you do request the transfer of records that you ensure that all fields are completed entirely, even if they are not required. Oftentimes, if you don't complete all fields, this will prevent the process from moving on. So we want to ensure that for the sake of completion that you do fill out all of the fields. One very important note is that if you do not have the student active in SEDS, you cannot ask for their records. You can't transfer their records. So this essentially means that if the student already appears in your LEA SEDS account, they have to have a white check mark next to their name in order for you to be able to request their records. If you don't see the white check mark, then you want to speak to your registrar and find out if the student will be appearing in your SIS. And then if there are any questions or concerns about a previously submitted transfer request, please do not hesitate to submit an OSSE support tool, and our team will get back to you with some responses. We also want to follow with some comments on who should have access to the OSSE support tool. So who would be given access, who can have access in any case. So we have 3 major categories of users who may be granted access to the OSSE support tool. And we just wanted to detail who these individuals are. So those of you who are listening in on this webinar right now will have access since you're the LEA SE POC. And we just wanted to note that LEA SE POCs that are independent charters will only be able to submit tickets for enrollment-related issues using the, again, enrollment-only rule that is listed below. I'll detail that in a second. So any other special education issue, you'll submit through DCPS. The second category of user is an enrollment-only LEA data administrator. So again, all enrollment-related issues that may have to do with enrollment audit or child count will have this role. And then finally, the last category of OSSE Portal user is the non-public SEDS point of contact, so the NPPOC. And this specific role is intended for non-public staff who need to make a request to the OSSE. If you do not fall, or if you do not fall within one of these three categories, then we ask that you request from one of these aforementioned individuals that they submit a ticket on your behalf. So at this time, we're going to just pause and reflect for a few moments to give you an opportunity to ask any questions regarding any of the topics that I have covered. Okay. So let's move on and talk about some of the resources for improvement in data quality. We have some new resources for you that we wanted to detail and highlight, and we think these are great additions.
All right, so let's just give you an update on the LEA Planning and Performance Report. All of you should be intimately familiar with the LEA Planning Performing Report. This is a report that has been emailed to you every Friday for as long as you can remember, hopefully. If you're not getting these Friday emails, that means you have not yet signed up on our listserv by providing your contact information, which hopefully all of you have. So we are adjusting the way the performance and planning report looks a little bit, adjusting the way the calculations are done so that it can more accurately reflect your responsibilities. And the change is happening with that very top part of the performance report that has to do with C to B transition for 3-year-olds. So if you do not serve young children in your LEA, then this might not be applicable to you. So at the very top of the report, usually you would see two different metrics. You'd see a metric showing whether or not the eligibility was done on time for a Part C to B transition and whether or not an initial IEP was held prior to the 3rd birthday. And so moving forward, you're only going to see one metric. You're only going to see the IEP metric for the C to B transition. And this is going to show whether or not the IEP was in place by the 3rd birthday, and this metric is not changing. However, the other metric with regards to eligibility timeliness has been moved down to the Part B section because LEAs are still responsible for meeting the 120-day eligibility timeline requirement. And so we've lumped that together with all of the other students who have to meet the 120-day eligibility requirement. So you'll see on this next screenshot here, this should look familiar. This is where the metrics are for the initial and the reevaluation. So nothing will look different here, but just know that this box for initial eligibility will now also include students who have been referred over from the Part C infant toddler program, as their referrals also need to be evaluated within the 120 days. So now there will be, and in addition to that, the IEP metric of the 30 days after the eligibility is complete, that IEP metric will also include those students. So for those Part C to B students, they will have one measurement at the top of the report showing whether or not their IEP was in place by age 3, and then they will also have 2 metrics for those students here in the middle of the report for meeting the 120-day eligibility requirement and then meeting the 30-day IEP requirement following the eligibility. And we'll talk more about where you can find these reports in SLED. We'll remind you of that later in the webinar.
We also wanted to, thank you, Annette, we also wanted to detail that the process that previously existed for accessing the LEA P&P report will be modified slightly. So we wanted to just move into this this reminder, this announcement that we're going to be making right now. So previously, the method in which the LEAs had access to the LEA P&P report was that you would be emailed a copy on a weekly basis of these LEA P&P reports. We are instituting a new protocol, and we just wanted to highlight some of these respective dates. So from September 1st through the end of October, October 31st, you will continue to receive the LEA P&P report via weekly emails. So you have roughly another month and a half of receiving these LEA P&P reports via email. After that point, from October 31st through the SEDS mid-year release, which will be sometime in January, we will then move to sending you a link that will allow you to access the LEA P&P report in SLED. And after the SEDS mid-year release in January, we expect that the LEAs will then find the LEA P&P report in SLED themselves. So we just wanted to detail this, this new protocol and let you know that we will continue to email you the reports through the end of October, and after that point we will transition to a link, and then after the SEDS mid-year release, you will then have to locate the report in SLED yourself. Moving on, we wanted to also highlight a new feature that we have in the OSSE support tool that allows you to, and that gives you an opportunity to verify your school hours. So this is a new feature that is added to the OSSE support tool, and you'll find it at the top toolbar at the very, very right-hand side. And we are essentially giving you an opportunity to amend and to verify your school hours in order to ensure that the information that is listed in the OSSE support tool is accurate. So in order to access this option, I'll walk you through the steps. The school hours icon, again, like I said, is listed at the top toolbar under the OSSE support tool all the way at the right-hand side. And to verify your school hours, you'll click on the school hours icon, and then what you'll notice is what will pop up is your school hours and your LEA. And to edit your school hours, if you see that your beginning time and your end time and your instructional hours is inaccurate, then you can edit these respective times by clicking on the edit button. It's actually a pen that allows you to confirm that the school hours are correct. Once you click on that pen icon, that edit icon, you will then be given an opportunity to rectify, again, to amend these school hours. And in order to get to the point, so essentially what we're wanting you to do is to confirm that the hours that are shown above are either correct or inaccurate. If you find that they are correct, then we ask that you select this little box right here that states, I confirm that the instructional hours shown above are correct. If you select that option, then there is nothing left for you to do regarding school hours. If, however, you notice that the school hours are inaccurate, then we ask that you select this button right here that confirms that the hours are not reflective of the bell-to-bell schedule. If that is the case, then another box will pop up that will then allow you to enter in your school hours. And what you'll be required to do is then provide a rationale for correcting the instructional hours. Once you've provided both the hours, the corrected hours, as well as the rationale, we ask that you select the green Save button above. We then ask that you ensure that the school hours are finalized and confirmed. If all information is correct, then you should be able to move on. We are giving you a time block to go in and actually rectify and or amend these school hours between today, which is September 17th, and September 26th. We ask that you go into this new feature in the OSSE support tool and ensure that your school hours are accurate. And this essentially leads us into the child count phase. So this verifying your school hours will allow us to lead into the next phase of child count. So again, that's why we ask that you have it done sooner rather than later. I mean, if you want to go in and do it today, we would be very happy with that as well. So you don't have to wait until September the 26th. Going in today would be perfect as well. We also wanted to point out some resources regarding some resources for improvement. We've had some feedback formerly that some of the LEA POCs as well as other users had some difficulty with needing to, not difficulty, but it was tedious to have to go in and amend an IEP. So we are now in the IEP section with regards to child count. With regards to child count, no longer are you required to amend an IEP if you find that there is an inaccuracy. So if you go into your IEP, if you go into the IEP and you go to the least restrictive environment, if you notice that there is an issue, or if you notice that there is a problem, we ask that you no longer have to go in and amend it. What you can do is now amend it in the OSSE support tool, so you don't have to submit an IEP amendment anymore.
Yes, that's correct. Because last year, what was happening is a lot of IEP team members weren't aware of the fact that on the LRE page, the percentage that was calculated, it was automatically calculated from what was put on the other pages with services and such. However, underneath that percentage, you will see for the educational environment a variety of buttons to select. A lot of IEP team members assumed that that button would be pre-populate based on the percentage, but that's not correct. You actually have to manually choose the educational environment button for the correct environment. Otherwise, it will just default to what was what was there before. So a lot of teams didn't notice that they needed to manually select that, which led to the wrong educational environment, which then led to issues with child count last year, and then everybody had to go back and amend their IEP. It's very burdensome. So if that same issue is happening this year, where there's the wrong educational environment on that page, instead of having to amend, you can simply fix it in the Enrollment Audit QuickBase tool as part of your child count process. Anything else that needs to be amended, of course, will need to go through the proper IEP amendment channels. But for this particular metric of educational environment, you can fix it just in QuickBase without doing an amendment for purposes of child count. Of course, when your next annual IEP meeting comes around, you'll definitely want to fix it in the IEP at that time.
Thanks, Annette. We also wanted to let you know and just remind you that any and all necessary IEP amendments are required and must be completed in SEDS by October the 6th. And again, we just listed that the exception is if there is an issue with the educational environment, you can access that and update that in the QuickBase tool. All students that are listed must be receiving services as of October 6th, which is why we are, letting you know that you should go in right now and verify that everything and all the information is correct. Additionally, if you need some clarification on this process, we have listed a hyperlink below that will allow you to watch a brief webinar that will detail some of the tools and the process for ensuring that all of this information is accurate. So you can access a small webinar through this hyperlink, and that should be available relatively soon. Okay, we're going to move on to SLED right now, and we wanted to just walk you through accessing some of the reports in SLED. Again, SLED is a repository of reports. It's the statewide longitudinal educational data system that allows you to access your DC CAS scores, your attendance, and all demographic data. So all LEA POCs need to access SLED in order to view your SEDS reports. If you do not have access to SLED yet, which we do realize that at this point some of you may not have access to SLED, we ask that you, and we'll detail where you need to submit the request to access SLED reports in just a little while. But to get to SLED, you will go to http://sled.osse.dc.gov. And as we mentioned, you will be able to pull reports through the SEDS, through the Reports tab that is listed in SLED. The Report tab is a set of reports that point to information that is actually actionable in SEDS data. So you as LEA POCs should be viewing these reports on a weekly basis. And in order to access these reports, once you log into SLED, you'll click on the Reports tab above, and once this page loads, you'll then be asked and prompted to re-enter your information and agree to FERPA prior to actually viewing these reports. Once you've gone through this process, you'll then be able to run, export, and print a variety of reports from the SEDS Reports tab, and that includes the LEA P&P report that we just detailed. So these reports are updated on a weekly basis, and again, we recommend that you as LEA POCs actually download and save copies of each of these reports on a weekly basis to track timeliness, improvements over time, and to keep track of your statistics. The SEDS Reports tab, as a tip, the SEDS Reports tab will open with a tree view, a hierarchy of all accessible reports on the left-hand side, and all of the hidden reports can be hidden by clicking on the Hide button on the left-hand side. We just wanted to detail a few of the very important reports that you may have been already accessing or that you may not know about in SLED. Again, as POCs, you're encouraged to access and review each of the reports prior to the beginning of the school year and then on a weekly basis throughout the school year. So again, we've already discussed the LEA P&P report. Another report that is very valuable to you is the Events Not Transferred report. And this report will list any students who have at least one special education event record that has not been transferred from your previous LEA to the current LEA. Another very important and useful report is the LEA roster planning report, and this will provide a list of some of the services on the most recent IEPs for any of the newly enrolled students, and this is for the purpose essentially of planning your resources for your upcoming school year. Additionally, there is a data quality error report and the duplicative enrollment report. We have been getting a lot of tickets regarding duplicative enrollment and some of the issues related to duplicative enrollment. So you can also access the report in SLED that will speak to any data quality errors as well as duplicative enrollment issues on the main page, the home page of SLED. So if once you have printed out any of the previously discussed reports, you want to go back and print out the duplicative enrollment report, you would go back to the home page, and then again on the left-hand side, you'll see data quality error reports. So we wanted to detail some next steps for you as the LEA SE POCs regarding SLED. If you have not either gained access or are unfamiliar with SLED reports, we encourage that you attend the next SLED training, which will be held next Wednesday, September 24th from 9:30 to 11 a.m. on the 3rd floor of OSSE. And you can RSVP by mailing this address listed above, sled.info.dc@dc.gov. Again, we remind that you view the SEDS reports in SLED at least on a weekly basis. We will not be emailing you copies of SEDS reports after October 31st. And then we ask again that we remind that you download weekly reports to use for your historical purposes in order for you to track improvements in your LEA over time. And I'm going to pass the mic over to Annette, who will then ask a poll question.
Good morning, everyone. This poll question might look familiar from 1 month ago, and I'm really hoping that we will get much better results this time. So if you don't mind, please select your current level of interaction with SEDS reports housed within SLED at this time. And again, Dina just reviewed this, and she let you know about those 3 important reports that have to do with SEDS, the planning and performance, the events not transferred, and the roster planning report. Additionally, she pointed out 2 very helpful reports for duplicative enrollment and other data errors. When I polled you last month, there were a lot of you that had not yet accessed SLED or had not yet looked at one of your reports in SLED. So please don't disappoint me this time. Just a few more seconds for everyone to cast their vote. All right, I'm going to close this poll, and at this time I'm going to share the results. As you can see, only 25% of you actually regularly view those SEDS reports within SLED. That's not very high. I'm going to quiz you again next month, and it better be higher. A lot of you don't even have access to SLED, so next week you really need to be attending that training to get access. The rest of you that have sort of dabbled in SLED, I encourage you to make this a very regular practice on a weekly basis to go in there and view those reports. As Dina discussed, we are phasing out the weekly emails that we send to you. We want you to be more self-reliant in accessing these reports and monitoring your own timeliness and compliance. And so instead of just emailing to you, instead of getting you a fish, we're teaching you to fish. So thanks for your help with that. Now let's move on. At this time, we are going to review very quickly. We're going to talk about non-public students, and from there we're going to talk about PARCC accommodations and SEDS. And that will wrap up the most substantive part of our webinar, and following this part there will just be some reminders and announcements. So let's move into this section. So a lot of you have students placed in non-public schools or programs. And what we've noticed is that for some LEAs, once they place a student in a non-public program, they forget about them. Out of sight, out of mind. They just think the non-public program is taking care of them, and they're sort of hands-off. Well, I'm here to tell you that that's not how it should be. Students in non-public programs are still your students. They're still enrolled in your LEA. And you in your particular position as the POC actually have some extra responsibilities regarding these non-public students that I just want to remind you of. And thank you to those of you who are already doing these things and who are already being quite diligent with overseeing the services of those non-public students. So as a reminder, you have the power to create a SEDS account or to grant access to certain students within SEDS to non-public staff. If that non-public has students only from your LEA and not from any other LEAs, then you will be the one to create their SEDS account and give them access. However, if the non-public has students from many different LEAs, then OSSE can create an aggregate account so they can access multiple LEAs. And if they need that, you need to let us know by submitting a ticket in the OSSE support tool that they need that aggregate account. And then once they have the account, it's up to you to give access to the student so that the non-public staff member can actually see the student. And I'm going to remind you of those steps on the next slide. Another thing that you need to do is work closely together with the point of contact at the non-public. There should be a person at every non-public who is the SEDS point of contact. If you do not know who that person is at each of your non-publics, you need to find that out. You need to ask their head of school or ask someone at the school, say, who is your SEDS point of contact? You should be in regular touch with them because you and them have to work together to make sure everything in SEDS is up to date and compliant. In addition, you have to work with that POC to troubleshoot any SEDS issues that are going on for a particular student. Of course, if there's something more massive, any higher level, bigger issues with SEDS at the non-public can reach out directly to OSSE, and they do have access to the OSSE support tool, so they can reach out to us. But if there's any issue with one student, they need to reach out to you to resolve that. And if you can't resolve it, you can reach out to OSSE as needed. Another thing that you're responsible for is ensuring that the non-public staff have proper training. They work for you. They are serving your student. You need to hold them accountable for being trained. If they have a SEDS account and they don't know how to use it, you need to direct them to watch the SEDS Basic User online video course on the SEDS resource site. Also, if there are any policies or procedures that you have at your LEA for the expectations of how you are using SEDS, you need to train the non-public on those. For example, if you have your own way of typing assessment information into SEDS, or if you have your own specific data sources that you require to be in SEDS, that non-public needs to know that about your LEA because they work for you. And if there, we do have SEDS Train the Trainer that many of you have attended. Non-publics are also welcome to attend SEDS Train the Trainer, but that would only be appropriate if their point of contact is actually going to be turning around and training a high number of their own internal staff on SEDS. And of course, if you are a larger LEA, you personally don't have to do these things if you have a colleague who is doing those things. You just need to work with them to make sure you've covered your bases. And just a quick reminder about how to give access to non-publics to view a student in SEDS, because we get this all the time. Non-publics will submit a ticket to us and say, help, I cannot see Johnny in my SEDS account even though they're coming to my non-public. Well, that's because the LEA needs to do certain things. So in order to grant access, of course, the student is still enrolled at your LEA, so they should be in your student information system, but it should list that they are attending that non-public school. And once you ensure the attending school is documented correctly, then you need to associate a non-public staff member with that particular non-public school campus. And then after that, you need to make sure that non-public staff member has the right user type in SEDS, and of course has the right can provide designation within SEDS. And once you have double-checked all of these steps, you should reach out to the non-public point of contact. Again, I mentioned that you should know who this person is, and you should be in regular contact with them. Reach out to them and double-check with them and say, hey, can your staff member now see Johnny in SEDS? Okay, great. Or if not, you need to troubleshoot with them and get to the bottom of it. Now let's talk about PARCC. As you know, PARCC is coming next spring. It's happening. And students with disabilities often need accommodations when they take the statewide assessment. So now let's talk about how you're going to document those accommodations in SEDS, even though SEDS has not been updated yet to show PARCC. When we do our mid-year release for SEDS in January, the accommodations for PARCC are going to be built into the system then. But you don't need to wait till January to figure out PARCC accommodations for all your students. In fact, if we required you to wait until January, that would wreak havoc and that would not be pleasant. So in the meantime, we have provided crosswalks for you to use, and I'm going to demonstrate how to use those crosswalks that allow you to choose a PARCC accommodation by choosing its equivalent DC CAS accommodation in SEDS. Now, there are a few, so most PARCC accommodations have an equivalent in DC CAS. They might be called by a different name, but they do have an equivalent, and the crosswalk will point that out. However, there are some new accommodations that are new and unique that have arisen because PARCC is a computerized test. And so those new ones, of course, do not have a corresponding one in SEDS, so you're going to have to document these on a separate worksheet that we have provided for you. And there's just 9 of these. And a couple examples are closed captioning, and also a paper and pencil edition of the assessment. So those are a couple examples of things, accommodations that you have not heard of before, that you have not had to consider using before, and now you might need to consider them for certain students. Not all students, but some students might qualify for those. So this is how it works as far as our expectations for you. I've shown here on the left side of the screen is the way things are going to work right now, and on the right hand of the screen is the way things will work if you happen to have your IEP team annual meeting after the mid-year release. So for right now, this fall, when you have your annual IEP team meeting, as part of your regular annual IEP meeting, of course, you always talk about statewide assessment accommodations. And when you get to that part on the IEP, as an IEP team, you're talking about accommodations and deciding if the student qualifies for any. And if they do, you will figure out what PARCC accommodations they need, and of course we have a PARCC accommodations manual and worksheets you can reference. And after you decide which PARCC accommodations they need, you pull out your crosswalk and you figure out which DC CAS accommodation is equivalent to that, and you select the DC CAS accommodation in SEDS. And I'll show you an example of that in just a minute. And then you take one more step and you say, okay, there's these 9 other accommodations that are brand new because PARCC is computerized, does our student need one of those 9? And if so, you will document it on this separate worksheet, and that worksheet will be faxed in as part of the IEP. Now, if you do it this way, you will not have to do an IEP amendment come January when the system changes, because doing it this way will be sufficient. And for those of you that have recently held an annual IEP meeting and didn't have the chance to use this worksheet, I'll explain to you what will need to be done about that also in just a minute. So the crosswalks and documents I've been referencing, there's 3 important ones that I want you to be familiar with and know where to find them on the website and download them and perhaps print them off to have sitting in front of you during each IEP meeting. The first one is the PARCC Accessibility Features crosswalk, and the second one is the PARCC Accommodations crosswalk. There's a difference between accessibility features and accommodations. Accessibility features are, they used to be accommodations for the DC CAS, but now they are available to all students, not just students with disabilities. Any student can have them if the school decides that that needs to be part of that student's personal needs profile for the assessment. So because they are accessible to everyone, they are no longer considered an accommodation, and you don't have to worry about documenting them on the IEP. Now, for the accommodations that are still considered accommodations, those will still need to be documented on the IEP, and the way that you'll do that is the way I just explained, where you'll choose the equivalent DC CAS accommodation using the crosswalk. And then the third worksheet is the one I talked about that OSSE has created and provided for you for those 9 extra accommodations should the need arise for the student to have one of those 9. Now let's look at these worksheets in more detail. Here's the accessibility features worksheet. And again, these are available to everyone. And as you can see here in the first 2 columns, there is an equivalent in DC CAS, which you could mark on the IEP, and that's fine if you choose to mark this DC CAS one, the equivalent on the IEP, that's great. But because it's now considered an accessibility feature, there's no requirement to do this because it's not just for students with disabilities any longer. So this worksheet, I'm just showing you the first page. The worksheet is actually much longer than this first page. This is just a snapshot. The second worksheet is for accommodations for students with disabilities. These are still considered accommodations, and so you're going to choose on DC CAS the equivalent of the PARCC here. And again, this is just the first page of the worksheet. Here is an example of how to use the crosswalk. Let's say in your IEP team meeting you decide that your student qualifies for the PARCC accommodation of scribing or speech to text. And then, of course, it doesn't say that in SEDS, but if you look in the second column, in SEDS, it is called oral response to test. So that's the exact same as the PARCC accommodation, it just has a different title. So you, in SEDS, when you go to this page, you mark the checkbox for the DC CAS one, knowing that it equates to the PARCC one. And that is sufficient documentation for purposes of PARCC. Now, here is the extra worksheet for those 9 extra accommodations that you have not previously seen associated with DC CAS. Now, I'm not going to go into detail about these 9. You can read all about them on this worksheet, and then you can read about them very in-depth in the PARCC Accommodations Manual if you need to. This is a simple check yes or no box, and then this worksheet can be uploaded into SEDS as part of the IEP. Here's the bottom page of the worksheet. There is one thing of note here is that there needs to be signatures. The signatures are just helping, and dates of the signatures are from all mandatory members of the IEP team. So you're using this as part of the annual IEP team meeting, and so everybody just needs to sign off that they're okay with selecting some of these extra accommodations by signing it and dating it and uploading it behind the IEP document. That will ensure that it is now technically considered part of the IEP. Because the rules for PARCC say that if you're going to give an accommodation for PARCC, it has to be documented on the IEP, and because you're not able to physically document it on the IEP in SEDS, if you document it on this worksheet, and sign it and fax it in with the rest of the IEP, it is now officially considered part of the IEP. Now, where is the document? Well, right now it's available for you. It has been uploaded to the main menu page of SEDS. So when you log into SEDS, you should see it there as the first worksheet under the English Documents under the OSSE tab. And now the big question is, what if I already did my annual IEP review last month and you didn't have that worksheet available for me? Now what am I supposed to do? And you're not going to have another annual meeting until after the PARCC. So what you need to do for these students is you just need to think about what you already selected for DC CAS on the IEP and take a look at that crosswalk at the equivalent PARCC accommodation to what you chose in SEDS for the DC CAS, and just think about if that's still good to go, if that's still what the student needs. And if it's not, then you're going to have to amend, but if it is, you're good to go. And then you also need to think about those extra 9 accommodations that are unique to PARCC, those 9 that are listed on that worksheet. And if the student happens to need one of those 9, then unfortunately you are going to have to amend the IEP to add that worksheet. And again, this is only for the students that actually need one of those 9 new accommodations that have come with PARCC. So that worksheet identifies those, and if so, you can amend the IEP. You don't have to hold a meeting. You can amend the IEP using the documented written agreement modality, where you just send the letter home to the parent and say, we propose to amend the IEP. Here's what we want to do. Here's this worksheet. They can sign it all and bring it back, and you can do the amendment in SEDS. And I'll just remind you quickly of how to do that. When you do an amendment, of course, you say the mode that you're doing it and what you propose. So for this particular situation, you will just choose a button that says Change Accommodation, and you will check the box that says Add New Accommodation. And when you have those text boxes where you actually have to describe the amendment in detail, you can just keep it very simple here. You just say you're adding a PARCC accommodation and just refer to the worksheet that you're going to upload. You can just say, see the attached PARCC worksheet. And that will take care of it for these text boxes, because the explanation will actually be what's on the worksheet. And of course, the best way is to try to do this without a meeting. Hopefully the parent and you will both agree that extra accommodation is needed, and the parent understands that PARCC is this new computerized test, so this is a new type of accommodation because of that. So hopefully they'll agree and sign it and send it back to you. And you can amend without having a meeting. But of course, if you don't hear back from the parent, or if they want to come in for a meeting, then you'll need to deal with that. And just as a last reminder, there's plenty of resources about PARCC on the website, on the OSSE homepage. You have all those worksheets that I just talked about, and some manuals that go very in depth. And for any further questions about PARCC, please email Michelle Blakey-Tuggle. Now, we are short on time, so I'm not going to pause and do question and answer. I'm just going to keep it moving. But of course, please keep typing your questions in the question box. Some last reminders and announcements. Again, we've harped on this before, but if you have not told OSSE who you are, then you need to do that by emailing the data email here and by emailing Tanya Lovelace. She's in charge of the database. She'll put your name on it as the official LEA Special Ed POC, and that will ensure that you receive those weekly emails on Fridays, and that will ensure you receive any other kind of important communication to you in this role. And of course, please make sure your calendar has been switched over to this school year, that your dates are correct in the calendar, 4 progress reporting periods plus 1 ESY reporting period. And if you don't know your ESY dates, just guess and then go back and amend them later, because you got to have something in there for this school year. And here are SEDS trainings. Most of you are already aware of these trainings. We've got SEDS Train the Trainer coming up. We've got our monthly webinar. We have that October 1st training on the fall release that Dina talked about. Tomorrow, or not tomorrow, Friday, we're giving our first ever related service providers training, which is also happening again in October. And so you would send a designated related service provider to this training and sort of a little mini train the trainer where that designated related service provider can come back to your LEA and hopefully support other related service providers who are having trouble with SEDS. And as I pointed out earlier, you need to make sure your non-public POCs are coming to the trainings they're supposed to come to, and we're giving them a webinar similar to this one next week. On the OSSE website, we are pleased to introduce our new K-12 calendar. This calendar lists all different kinds of training dates and deadlines and events coming up, not just for special ed, but for Common Core, science, behavior, English language learners, etc. So check out this calendar on the OSSE website. It's going to be refreshed once a month at the end of the week. And then if you see something on there you like, to get the actual details and registration info, you would go to the OSSE homepage calendar or watch out for it in the LEA Look Forward. And just a reminder, next week of a very important meeting. You might be the one your administrator wants to go to this meeting, or your administrator might be going themselves or sending somebody else. This is a compliance and monitoring meeting. Everybody always wants to know, when are we getting monitored? What are you going to do when you monitor us? What should we do to get ready for a monitoring visit? Well, if you come to this meeting, you can find out all about it. So the morning half of the meeting is talking about LEA monitoring processes and procedures. The afternoon is a special 2-hour session talking to LEAs about how they can prepare for non-public monitoring. So if you are an LEA that has students at non-publics, you might want to consider you yourself or one of your administrators or somebody else from your LEA to come to this meeting. Now, the afternoon session is not for non-publics, it's about non-publics for LEAs. You don't need to RSVP, just show up. And this is all explained in the Look Forward right now. And of course, we have a few other trainings coming up that are very exciting. If you serve preschool or pre-K students with disabilities and you have no idea what Child Outcome Summary is, then you or one of your staff members definitely needs to come to our training next week. But if you are very familiar with COSS and you know what it is, it's under control, you don't need to come to this new orientation. We'll have other webinars and stuff that we'll let you know about. We've got a nonviolent crisis intervention training coming up and a very exciting academic intervention webinar series coming up. Again, watch out for this on our new calendar and in the Look Forward. And just a plug for a pilot program we're starting this fall. It's a mentorship program. So we are looking for, and this is where we need your help. If you know of a special education teacher that's pretty new, like brand new or a couple years old, and you think they could definitely use a mentor and some extra support, please recommend to them to apply for this program. On the other hand, if you know of some special education teachers that are very seasoned, veteran teachers, they're awesome, they would make a great mentor for a brand new special education teacher, please encourage them to apply as well, and then we'll match them up and have this amazing mentorship program that will last throughout the year. And save the date for next spring. We have our first ever statewide Best Practices in Special Education Conference. This is very exciting. Stay tuned for more information about this. You should be receiving a postcard very soon that looks like this that will give you all the details. And a plug for learndc.org. This is a great resource. OSSE's website, as you know, is less than helpful sometimes. So OSSE also has been able to start up this other website, learndc.org. It's a lot more user-friendly, and this is where we're going to house so many different resources on instruction and teaching and behavior and Common Core. There's so much on here already, and it links to many different types of websites and companies that have provided so many things on lesson planning, etc. So we encourage you to check that out, or maybe not you yourself, maybe pass this along to some of your teachers. And on learndc.org, we also have school profiles, and we have information for different grade levels, and of course, many, many resources for early childhood. So have fun exploring. when you get on there, you can see the different types of people that can get resources here, so you can navigate pretty easily. This website's actually very navigable. I really like it. A lot more friendly than the OSSE website. And there is one more resource that we want to make you aware of. It's called the Educator Portal. And as you can see, it's the DCPS logo at the top because, in fact, DCPS is in charge of this portal. This is their thing. However, we have an agreement with them to where all charter schools can also access this portal to access resources, teaching resources on this portal. There's a lot of Common Core resources, there's video library, lots of resources for professional development. You can actually take online professional development courses on this website. And here's just a snapshot of all the different topics that you might find there. So again, this is hosted by DCPS, but we also have worked with them to make this available to all charter schools, and there should be someone at your charter school that has a link to this right now that they can share that with you. If you have questions about this particular resource, here's the contact person here at OSSE that you can ask more about. We really appreciate you participating today. We went over time. Thank you for being with us. If you have additional questions, we will stay on the line and you can continue to type those in the question box. We will send a follow-up email in a couple of days that will have a link to the recording and links to some of the things we talked about today, a link to a short video webinar on child count, and also all sorts of other little things. Again, we appreciate you coming today, and we look forward to seeing you next month on October 15th. Thank you.